hope it will come up soon. Okay. Yeah, I think you see it now. I've given indeed my presentation the title "The University as a School of Life," and I want to share with you the first experiences we've had at Ghent University in a pilot that ran last year in the use of so-called badges. Perhaps to set the scene first as a kind of introduction, the broader picture about what's all happening at European level with regard to credentialing, and I would like to refer first to the European Digital Credentials for Learning initiative from the European Commission, especially the Europass unit there, that very explicitly wants all learners to be able to document all their learning experiences. So not only the typical qualifications, and of course, we working at university, then first think about university degrees, the university diplomas, but also other types of assessment, for instance, those we see happening in the framework of student exchange, that is transcript of records, for instance, but also other types of entitlements, for instance, to be allowed to undertake a certain occupation, but also, and this is what I'll be focusing on, non-formal learning activities or events. Because if you look at it from a higher education institution's perspective, we have all these types of formal learning that can be either at an individual institution or jointly, for instance, in joint courses or in joint programs, but also at the level where we share courses between each other, like we see, for instance, happening in typical Erasmus mobility, but now more and more also at the level of micro-credentials. So that's formal learning. And on the other hand, our legislation in Flanders has given us the possibility to also take into account non-formal and informal learning experiences. And this was actually one of the reasons why, because we have these legal possibilities to issue and recognize at the level of individual courses, so-called credit certificates, and now also these micro-credentials, but also to do the same for informal and non-formal learning. And so this is why we at Ghent University took the decision to use a system, and there's a standard for that, the open badges that I will come back to later, for this recognition of informal and non-formal learning. So unlike some other countries, because I know that, for instance, in the Netherlands and also others, badges are also used for the recognition of formal learning. In our case, it's explicitly decided not to do that in the framework of formal learning, but also only for informal and non-formal learning. So this was the basis and the legal framework that we used to initiate a pilot project at Ghent University, as I said, that ran last year. And why did we want this possibility of using and issuing badges to be installed? Because it was approved by the Education Council about 2 years ago that we wanted to have a kind of framework for supporting and valuing so-called extracurricular activities and also student engagement of our students at the university. And in that framework, it was already decided that we would use so-called digital badges as a way to value this student engagement. And so in that pilot, we used an existing open badges system called Badger to do that. So, but first it's important to define and also perhaps limit what we understand under this umbrella of Ghent engagement. It has to be, it has to have a clear social contribution. So what the student does has to be meaningful for, at a societal level. It can, as such, be both within the university, but also in a broader social framework, but always linked to university life. That means that, for instance, if there is a project that the university has abroad and students are engaged in that, that's also a possibility to link that to a badge. Because we really started from this importance of informal and non-formal learning. It has to be very clearly linked to, let's say, the competence reinforcement of students. So it has to have a kind of learning effect on the student. So it's not just for the fun element, but the students really have to gain some extra competences because of that student engagement that we want to value with that badge. And of course, it has to be the student's own free choice to take on that engagement. So it has to be voluntary, and as a result of that, it by definition, if it's paid, if a student is paid for it, it's no longer in that respect purely voluntary, and there cannot be a badge attached to it. We decided to define a number of or certain types of badges that students could get for their student engagement. So 5 umbrellas, you could say, for these types of engagement. The first one being supporting fellow students. The second one being a student representative. In most cases, that would be somebody who's elected among his peers or her peers to be representing the rest of the group. The third one, typically a student organization leader, so having a mandate in a recognized student organization. A fourth one being a student taking on the role as a student activity organizer. And a fifth one could be any type of specific commitment in a Ghent University department or a faculty or a program. So after we've set up the scheme and defined these types, we also needed to decide what platform would we use for that. And we choose for Badger, which is one of the, let's say, products on the market that give you the possibility to issue these open badges. And open badges are a kind of common standard for these badges. So because these badges themselves, they have all the information related to the badges included in that. And Badger has the advantage that it's quite easy to set it up and to use it. We choose, there are also free accounts, but we choose for a paid account that has some advantages also related to GDPR issues and so on. And for those of you that use Canvas as their electronic learning environment, Badger is now part of Canvas credentials, so that makes it for those easier. I have to say, to be honest, that it was our original plan to also link it to our electronic learning environment called Euphora, but for some reasons that did not work out as planned. So we set it up as a standalone system, but I will tell you in the evaluation later on that it worked pretty well, so no specific issues there. So what you get then at Badger is you get your own page as Ghent University. This is why we paid for it. You get your own dedicated page. You can create your own layout, give some information on your own university and so on. So how did it work in practice? As I said, the definition is that it has to come from the student. So it was the idea that students should apply for recognition of their engagement within the initiatives themselves. And of course, one student will learn from another, precedents can be used there. As I already said earlier, it can be both local and international, but always with that explicit link with Ghent University. And so what was quite challenging there was assessing whether such an engagement that a student would present to be potentially linked to a badge, assessing whether it qualifies for the award of a badge or not. And therefore, we set up a system in which, on one hand, students themselves should take on some responsibility. That means that the Ghent Student Council was made responsible to do that for student representation. What we call the United Convention Chairs. That's the let's say the conventions are the umbrella organizations of all student associations. They were made responsible for student events and projects. And then, of course, if there is somebody from a faculty, from a department, and so on involved, it were the heads of these units that were made responsible for that. So that was how we set it up and how we tested it. We asked which department, which faculties, which directorates wanted to be involved. And so 4 faculties volunteered for the pilot. You can see them there, and 2 directorates. And initially, as I said, we made the students responsible there. And so the student council on one hand and the conventions as well. I've put them into brackets, and I will explain later why, because it turned out not to be so easy for them to take on that responsibility. So in this first round, last academic year, many different badges were issued. You can see them. You can see these named there. And so what you see is at the bottom of the screen, you can see these examples. So that under the umbrella of, for instance, student representation or student representative, you have, for instance, a badge Student Council Leadership 21-22, or under the label of supporting fellow students, you have a body for Erasmus student badges and so on. So this is the concept. So you have the umbrella label, and then with the specific name of the badge underneath it. In total, more than 600 students were given a badge. It was, of course, a pilot. Some faculties had been waiting for the possibility to issue such a badge for quite a while. So this is why we have in some of these pilot faculties quite high numbers, but also in the Department of Administrative Affairs, they have there I will go back one slide, the safety stewards. See, these are students that play a certain role in our own student dorms. And so they waited for these students to be until the system was set up to award the badge to all students that in the past couple of years were involved in that. So you can see the total numbers there. One of the big advantages of these badges is that they can very easily be shared on social media, and you can see there how many students immediately after the issuing of the badge shared it, and how what kind of social media they used for that. So what were the first evaluations or the first experiences with the pilot? Technically, it was almost perfect. I think there was one hiccup, but apart from that, everything went for all these 606 badges issued very smoothly. And it was also clear from the people that were issuing these badges that the workload is quite doable. What you in essence do is you have a kind of Excel file with the name of the student, the email address, and then on what kind of basis the badge has been issued. You link that Excel file in the badger system, and then all the rest works more or less automatically. As I said, the initial plan that the student organizations would take on responsibility there for issuing some students for their specific roles, that unfortunately turned out to be quite challenging. It was apparently for the students not so easy to take on that responsibility. And it was quite well astonishing to see that for them judging themselves, that because that's more or less where it comes down to, was quite challenging. So what we there saw was that it was transferred to the level of the faculties, where the faculties then took over the responsibility of the students to issue badges also for student representatives, for student organization leaders, and so on. A second challenge is the scalability, because of course we now saw it in a number of faculties, a number of our departments that worked with it. We will see how well scalable it is. That will still needs to be proven. A third quite difficult challenge was how to identify who potentially deserves a badge, and how to define the right earning criteria. So to define on what basis do we give these badges. Of course, you could say, well, it's just a badge. That's true. I mean, there's nothing official about it, but it's something that is identified. There is a Ghent University stamp on it, and so you want it to be a quality label as well. And you don't want almost all students that are graduating to have such a badge. So that was something that faculties were struggling with, and that we need to fine tune in order to scale it up to the whole university. And that is also linked to what I more or less defined as what kind of fishnet you want to use, because we saw that in some of the faculties that participated in the pilot, that they wanted to award a lot of students, a lot of engaged students with a badge, but others thought, well, we want to keep it more exclusive. And of course, since it's a university-wide initiative, we have to find a balance there, because we cannot have one faculty awarding a badge to half of their students and another faculty only awarding a badge to 5 of their students, so to say. And that also has to do with the fact at what moment do we want to issue a badge. Some faculties decided to do that after every academic year. Others say, well, we want to do it at the end of the study period. So we look upon graduation in the master, which students deserve such a badge or not. Because the initial idea was we want students to ask for it themselves, but also that turned out to be certainly the pilot quite difficult, because students didn't know, of course, at that moment that such a system existed. And that brings me to the conclusions. I think it's definitely very important for universities not to be active as a kind of school of life, and that means not only to focus on formal learning, but also reward engagement and other types of informal learning. It's clear that using an open badge and an open badge system like Badgr for this has many advantages. As I said, it's very, from a technical point of view, very easy to use. And as such, it is also important to have a very clear framework. And this is something that we still need to further fine tune. Not so much at the technical level, because as I said, that worked pretty well, but also in terms of how big do you want your fishnet to be, and so that comes down to how do we define the earning criteria? Do we want a lot of students to reach that, or is it a rather exclusive point of view you take there? And then finally, we do have some plans for the future there, where we already have foreseen in our initial framework that students could use this badge as a low threshold entry to the possibilities of APL, so or RPL, the recognition of prior experiential learning, and we want to do that by also offering to those students with a badge for student representation a specific course, so that they can build on the experiences they rather have and get some extra academic background to that, and validate, so to say, their informal learning in that way also in a formal part of their study program. So that's another potential plan for the future that we're rolling out now, and to link in that way the possibilities we have as a university to recognize informal learning with the possibilities, of course, and all the competence we have in terms of formal learning. So this is as a kind of introduction, and I will stop sharing my screen now and give back the floor to the colleagues to listen to the further presentation of Isa, and then I look forward to the discussion afterwards.
Indeed. Thank you, Frederik, for your presentation. Very informative, even for me, because I was not one of the faculty that you went who participated yet. But let's listen indeed to students themselves and their engagement. And Isa, you're from University of Helsinki, so I'm glad to hear your story as well.
Hello, everyone.
Hi.
My name is Isa Stuki. I also have a presentation. I will share the slides in a second. Yes, you can see them now. Perfect. Yes, so I'm here to tell about university's role in supporting students' own innovativeness. And yes. So first I'm going to introduce myself because I think you might know each other, but I don't know you and you don't know me. So my name is Isa Stuki. I'm a 5th year food and economics and consumption student. I started my master's degree last year, 2000, or actually 2 years ago officially, 2021. I have a bachelor in environmental and food economics from 2018. And before my university studies, I was in high school, and I also was in Germany for 1 year. And I thought this was important when talking about extracurricular activities, because this most certainly was that. And it was an important time of my life. So currently, I work as an education coordinator at the University of Helsinki, Wikifood Design Factory. I will tell about Wikifood Design Factory later, but this is quite an important thing for me at the moment. Before, and actually currently, I'm also working for Fazer, which is a confectionery brand in Finland. And also I've been working for Fiskars, also during my studies. And my extracurricular activities, some of those are listed here. I'm currently part of this Pre-Terminator program, which is organized by Wikifood Design Factory, and I'm also teaching there, which is quite funny. And I have been taking part of student association in my field in years 2021 and 22, so quite late, so to say, in my studies. Usually people started when they are freshmen, but I started a little bit later. And what was quite important time of me was when I took EIT Food Master class. It took 1 year, and it was really helpful, and it engaged me, so to say, into university. I would say, because that's also how I got the job that I'm currently working at. I was also international tutor 2019. So this is just to name a few. I think I've done more, but some examples. And why do we need extracurricular activities? Because life is more fun when there is more fun, just in short. And I just wanted to take UNESCO's explanation of what is extracurricular activity. I think you all know, but just I agree on this. It's a range of activities organized outside of the regular school day curriculum or course intended to meet learners' interests. These activities can help learners become more involved in their school or community and can help them to develop social and soft skills to promote well-being. And I think I can agree on this a lot. These are, for example, extra courses outside of the normal studies, assistance in courses where more experienced students are teaching the less experienced students. I think this is quite important because when you are just recently when you have get to know the topic, you know how you learned it, so you know how to teach it, and it's important for both people. And also some other activities are student association, working, tutoring, etc. This is just to name a few. Fredrik also named some in his presentation. And I was thinking, like, why universities should be part of a student's life only academically. I don't know. This is just a question, and that's what you are also thinking. And in this point, I was thinking that maybe we want to think, what are these students? I know that you know them really well, but what is the student's life? So when you are entering to university, you are most probably a person in your 20s, and you are excited about life. You are excited about your future, everything. You want to do everything, basically. And maybe not only study, but of course also that you're interested in what the university can offer. But you are also quite, you know that there is not too much time that you can spend on things. You're very, I think people nowadays are really aware of their time that they can spend. And the universities are, I know maybe especially here in Finland, and my friends in Germany have said that they have pretty tight schedules in the university. So one credit acquires 27 hours of work. So you need 15 credits for one period. It's 405 hours in 6 weeks. So quite a lot of time it takes. And maybe students are thinking when they start university that do I have time for anything else? Because I have to do this. This is what I have to do in order to get out of the university. But, well, I think we know that, of course, everyone has time for everything else. So why not to be part of that as a university? Why not to take the activities for the university and support the students? So in Finland, I think we have solved this issue at some level by giving credits from many activities that you do outside the curricula. And it's a good and a bad thing, because some people do those extra things only because they get credits out of those things, and they might not be like really interested in those activities. But also it's really nice because all the people are not the same. So some people get more interested and feel that the extra activities are more important to them than the basic studies. So it's nice to reward them this way, because why credits? I think it's quite easy and it's also free for university to just give credits and then name some activities as courses. For example, tutoring is a course in Finland, and that's a quite nice way to earn credits. And I think it's nice that you can also, and we have also some courses where you can get credits, where you can basically say that you have done something outside the university, and you can explain it in a learning diary basically, and you can get credits out of that. So it can be some volunteering at Scouts, or it can be some work or that you are doing, and you can get credits from that. I think it's quite nice. But also badges, it was an interesting example. I liked it, and certificates that you can get from universities. So something official. So my own experience, that what I have gained from these extracurricular activities is that it's innovativeness that you can get when you are not doing something that someone has said to you beforehand. It's value for everyone. It's value for yourself, for the university, for the people that you're working with. And I think this is the second point, is maybe the most important. You feel more connected to your university where you are studying. You know the people better. You know how it's structured, because these activities are basically, okay, of course, it depends on the activity. If it's a course organized by the university, then you, of course, get to know the university better. But it depends. But I think it gives you meaningfulness in your life because it creates connections. You also, if it's a course with multidisciplinary fields, you get to know people from different backgrounds, and you get to work in different kinds of teams. So it's a very important work-life skill. Also, extra courses that you can take outside of the curricula that you're currently studying is giving you the expertise that makes you special. So it's really important in that way as well. And this last point is from the student associations that we have in Finland. So you can organize things, whatever you want, and do it your way. So it's proactivity, and it's also something that you are learning by doing. So, and you get something out of university also from this kind of activities. Yes, so this was my own experience. From these are actually all collected from different activities, but just to name a few, and you can ask more about it later. Next, I'm going to explain a Wikifood Design Factory where I'm working at currently, because this is a very important part of the student engagement, also from outside the extracurricular activities. So we are a Wikifood Design Factory is part of University of Helsinki and the Faculty of Agriculture and Forestry. We are working here, and we want to nurture and nourish and nurture out new innovations and innovators for transforming the food system. And how we are doing this is by helping people with their ideas. And where I'm working at is the student part of the Wikifood Design Factory. And we see that the students' own ideas are in the core. Here are the main things that we are providing at Wikifood Design Factory. I'm working in this pre-terminator part, which is the first part of the picture. It's for food innovation education and incubator. It's an incubator for future change makers. So this is a program that you can apply to, and it's outside everyone's curricula. And this is a program that was developed actually 2 years ago. This year it was for the first time. It was ongoing course, but this was developed from my friends and from my colleagues' knowledge. So we knew that we need something to support the students' own innovativeness, and we knew that there is a lot of people want this. So we did it, and we have gained a lot of good feedback from that. And I'm going to explain the flow very shortly. But first, I'm gonna explain the Germinator. So it's more advanced. So for the pre-Germinator is for students, and Germinator is for more advanced teams with their own innovations. And these people can get to meet in Wikifood Design Factory and also talk about their innovations and things. And this is a meeting point and ecosystem for innovative people. So yes. And also we're doing thematic research collaborations for food system transformation, but it's another topic. This is the pre-Germinator. So it's basically a course where you get credits, and we wanted to give credits because it's quite typical in Finland to give credits from courses, but this was something that no one had actually in their curricula. So we advertised the first course called Me as a Changemaker. It's over here, the second arrow. We advertised it in the faculty of, or actually the whole university, and we got 50 students to take it. And they were developing their own ideas further. So it was really exciting thing for them. And after the course, they had to apply for this hands-on course called From Ideas to Innovation. And this was a course where people or is actually a course because the people are still working in that course, and me as well. They are developing their own ideas further, and we are giving them a lot of help for them during this time period and organizing workshops. And during this second course, they are also having networking events, excursions. We have 4 altogether where we are traveling across Finland and other design factories. And we are getting to know a lot of other people from different backgrounds. And this whole thing ends in a demonstration gala where everyone is pitching their ideas. So this is a whole set, and me and my colleagues are organizing it, and we have gained a lot of good feedback about it, and people are very interested in having this course because it's something that it's supporting their own innovativeness. And this is one way university can support students' own innovativeness. And also from my point of view, I was I was really happy to be able to create this kind of course because I knew that this was needed. So I would like to end my presentation in this slogan. So let students show where they want to go. So let them do what they want and give something, for example, credits, badges, whatever, to support that. Thank you.
Thank you, Isa, and thank you for your enthusiasm. And indeed, you think we know students and people in their 20s, but we don't actually very well. So thank you for taking the floor here. So yeah, we're ready to take some questions here. So maybe raise your hand for those who are interested and who want to know more, who got excited but didn't get the details, who want to say some words, whatever. Who will take the floor first? Always difficult. Marta, yeah, please.
Hi, good afternoon, everyone. Thanks for those two great presentations. I have just one question or consideration. Do you think that those credits or any other awards you give are somehow recognized externally? And is it a concern for students that what they get for this extracurricular activities is actually meaningful, but only within academic community? Thank you.
Thank you. This is a really good question. I think it was for me. I think these credits are valued, I think, or also externally, because people who are graduated students, they are very valued students. So these credits go to the optional courses that you can take, and this is something that makes the student graduate. And of course, I think if you explain in your motivation letter, if you're, for example, applying for a job and you explain what you know, what you can do in some, for example, after our course where you are learning the innovative skills, then this is something that you can benefit like that in that way. Of course, it's something that is maybe not as recognized as a certificate or something like that, but it helps you to graduate from the university. So in that way, it's important. I don't know if I just answered to your question, but please ask more.
Yeah. No, it's okay. Thank you very much.
Add something to that, perhaps. Because I think it's very interesting to see the different approaches that were presented by Isa from Helsinki and the one that we've taken at Ghent University. And I have to say that was also explicitly demanded by the students that we would look for alternatives for credits, because credits is, of course, what we know best at universities, what is to add to the question that Marta was asking, which is very easily recognized also outside, of course, because it's part of the degree program. But students, they wanted to have an alternative for that, because they thought it was valuable that next to getting credits for their formal learning, which is, of course, where universities are focusing on, they wanted also to get kind of recognition for their engagement and in that respect, the informal learning pathway that they've chosen. But at the same time, we found it important that there is a bridge between these two, so that if they want to get a more, let's say, traditional recognition in terms of credits, that there is a bridge we make there between the possibility to get this badge and to get that reward for the engagement and the number of hours you invested and the learning you gained there, and the way in which we can traditionally reward learning outcomes of students by means of credits. And that's why, and I pointed to that the last phase, that's why we're also looking there at how badges can be used to lower the threshold for recognition of prior learning, and we will also link that to a specific course probably that students will then be able to follow and do that with let's say less effort, because they have already proven to have gained some of these competences by means of the badge that they've earned for that. So I think it's important, I think, to state that it is not only the perspective of the university, but also that of the students that we have to take into account in making these decisions. Because in our case, at least, students say, well, we want to have our curriculum to be focused as much as possible on the learning outcomes that we need to achieve in order to then transition to the labor market. And of course, both are very valuable. And I think we have to take both perspectives into account.
Indeed, that's why we took two different lectures to show that. I have another question from Isaac. Maybe you can present yourselves, and just to let you know that Marta, who just had the question, was from Warsaw University, where we have indeed the colloquium end of April, face-to-face, and also member of our ICA edu team. Isaac, the floor is yours.
Oh, hi, everyone, and thank you both so much. That was fantastic talks. I've been scribbling away crazily to try and get everything down. My name is Isaac. I'm a lecturer in Cardiff University in Wales, and I oversee the learning community aspect of quite a large school of about 2,000 undergraduate students within the discipline of biosciences. And one thing that I've always struggled with is we try and introduce initiatives that give students the chance to flourish, like the Changemakers program or badges, and they work, but it's the really good students who just take on more opportunities to advance with those experiences, and getting the students who are maybe in the middle ground is a bit harder to engage them. So I'd love to hear what you think is most successful, and how, if we were to implement something like this within Cardiff University, how you'd recommend us targeting that sort of middle ground group of students who could potentially increase their engagement.
This is a really good question. I've always considered myself as a middle grade student, and I still always do these kind of things. So if I think from my point of view, I would get maybe students to advertise this kind of course and these kind of opportunities. I would use their knowledge from the field and try to maybe get those students who are maybe more interested in this kind of activities to go to their fellow students and talk to them and try to get them involved. This is my point of view.
By students for students, that's what you're saying.
Yeah, students for students. Yeah, they know how to get them involved.
Yeah. Friedrich, what do you think?
It's indeed a very important point to set up a system that does not only, let's say, cater for those that are at the top of the pyramid. I think that's a very, very important element. And one of the ways in which we tried to tackle that was by defining these very broad categories of badges, including, for instance, student organization leaders, which can include also students that, well, let's say academically are not very much involved in what's happening at the university, but from another perspective contribute a lot. And that is by organizing parties, even, so to say, to take the most extreme example, perhaps, which is, of course, also a very important element of student life and of student well-being and so on. And so by explicitly also taking that kind of activities on board, and not only those that have a more, let's say, academic, for instance, being part of a program committee as a student and so on, which I think are very obvious, but also taking these less obvious elements on board. We really wanted to broaden the perspective and also make sure that these students can can have access to such a badge. And that is also true for some of the other examples that I showed, in which, for instance, these safety students, they are just those who are living in one of the student dorms and say, well, I want to take some responsibility. They're rather low profile, but they get courses in first aid, and they get specific trainings in how to deal with the fire alarms and things like that. So very down to earth, but at least it's and very accessible and open. And so these are a few examples to show that by let's say broadening the possibilities of these badges, you can also broaden the scope of what type and what kind of student you can take on board, I think. And well, judging from the numbers, I think we've been rather successful in achieving that, at least.
Thank you both so much. That was extremely helpful. Is there time for me to ask a second question?
Yes.
There is. Okay.
Sure.
Then Frederick, directed towards you. This is a hard question, but in terms of staff workload, because I really like the idea, but what struck me is something you said, that having students involved in screening the suitability of other students was a challenge. And I'm wondering, for the future, how will you navigate that, and how would you advise someone who is interested in introducing something like this, but didn't want staff to run a mile when they heard about potential workload?
It's very important to say that in some cases, those that were involved in the pilot, they were already looking for or trying to set up a kind of, let's say, credentialing system, to take a very neutral term there. And so for these, this system has proven to be very, very helpful, because, as I said, the threshold is very low. The workload is really very manageable. As I said, it's producing an Excel file, and that's it, and all the rest comes out automatically. So for those, I think that it has been a big step forward. For those that perhaps were not thinking about setting up a system in which they wanted to reward it, this can indeed seem as something that comes on top of it. Initially, the idea was not to cater for the latter. It was to cater for the first category, those that wanted to have a system, that there is something centrally put in place, and there is extensive explanation on how to deal with that, and there is a manual how to set it up. And for those, it has proved to be very. For the others, indeed, it can seem a bit cumbersome, and we have had some questions. Mika said that she's from a faculty that has not been in the pilot, and of course that means that they were questioning what is there in it for us, and I fully understand it, because if you see it as something that comes on top of it, then of course it can be quite cumbersome. But so the trigger has to be, how can we use the badges for those students that we want to give a kind of reward anyhow. So that's the first very low threshold entry. The second one is, of course, which I fully understand, if one faculty does it in one way and another does not, then of course students will try to become a bit nervous and say, well, my friend got a badge for that, why can't I get that? And so from that perspective, we thought that giving the initiative to the students would be helpful, so that they could ask themselves, I think, because of what I did, that I deserve a badge. So that's an entry to solve that. And the second one is indeed that we're now looking with Mika and her colleagues, so those responsible for education at the faculty level, to find some common ground there, and to set some common standards on, okay, what is what in terms of earning criteria, what is the minimum standard that has to be reached, to avoid that in one faculty, as I said, 200, and in another faculty only 5 students get such a badge. And that's a bit of a let's say, tuning exercise that we are now trying to get involved in, and see how it works. But I think that the reassuring part is that from a technical point of view and an administrative point of view, the threshold is very low and will remain very low. The difficult part is what students will we award that badge on what earning criteria. We were hoping that students themselves could play a role in that, but unfortunately, and I understand their reluctance there. We had to shift a little bit gear there, but I do think that we can find sufficient common ground in between the faculties to solve that issue.
Indeed.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, it is about mainly, I think you expressed very well what type of fishnet would we use, because to make it kind of, yeah, we need to have some common grounds there. We have time for one last question, I think, if somebody still has a reflection, a comment, or a question even that we can take along further to the ICA Edu face-to-face colloquium.
If there is no other question, I do have a question for Isa, if that's okay, but I don't want to take the floor if there's somebody else who wants to go for it. Because I was already referring to these differences, because you very clearly said, Isa, that in Finland, or at least in Helsinki, will you please do it? It's for students rather common to get credits for all these type of things. Is that something? But you put some question marks there. Is it good or bad? Is that something that's still debated at your university or in Finland in general? That that students only want to get engaged in that kind of activities if they get credits for it, or some students would say, well, I'd rather choose electives in another type of activity. I don't know, is it still under debate?
Yeah, this is a good question, because I haven't been thinking about that anymore that much, because I think it was a debate maybe a few years ago when everyone in my study field got a lot of credits from these kind of extra things, and people are like questioning if those credits are as valuable as some other credits. But then because it's very commonly used method, then I think that people have understood that it's like this. And in universities you get credits from extra courses. If you've been to military in some level, for example, you get also credits. But of course, military is for the half of the population, it's mandatory. They might get some credit from that as well. So people do understand that these credits are earned from some activities. Of course, I think it's really important that you don't only get credits when you apply those, but you have to also explain why you earn those credits, and then it's more equal and also fair to earn those. But I also don't have that broad view about do other universities offer those in the same way, but I think in Finland in general we have quite like the education system in universities, and under that it's all pretty similar in every like school, and that's why I would say that it's pretty similar in all the universities and also these other types of schools. But yeah, I think it's quite fairly accepted.
Yeah. Okay, thank you. I think we're about our time is up. I would say I would like to thank both our speakers, very complimentary and very well presented. So it was really informative. And as Isa said, do other universities do it the same way? Well, I will invite you all to join us in Warsaw end of April. That's what we're going to discuss, to know more about how do other universities do it? How can we learn from one another? What are different views on it? So ideally, we will move on with these discussions. But for today, it was enough, I think. So thank you for listening. Thank you for joining. And thank you, especially applause for Friedrich and Isa. And yeah, all is left is to wish you a joyful afternoon. And see you next time in one of our webinars or at a conference somewhere. Thank you.
Thank you.